Okay, hello everybody. We're still testing this live feature a little bit, and today we're broadcasting this on Zoom too. So bear with us a little bit as we get used to this technology. We wanted to share a little bit with you today. Silke and I grew some. Now this is actually called turquoise corn from Hopi land. And sometimes we call it blue corn because it's blue. But of course, you get quite a bit of variety when you grow this. And we've got a giant basket here next to us. We just had a little patch of corn, and these seeds were gifted to us, just a little handful from a really precious farmer friend that we visit. We're going to go there and help harvest more of his corn tomorrow. When he shared that corn with us, he shared it with a very intentional story, and he repeated it several times. I remember that. It was very distinct. And Silke, maybe if you would share that with us.
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank this farmer who just has so much love for the corn. So there was a time when he had a visitor who said, I have some special seeds for you. They were grown far away on the Hopi land by a grandmother on the first mesa. And so he was able to receive 6 seeds, and he stored them and he cared for them until it was time in the spring to plant them. And he told that to the children, look, my whole big field of corn is grown out of these 6 kernels. And so by now I have a whole field and I can share. And every time somebody asks me, can I please grow some of this corn on my land? I say yes, and bring some of the corn you have planted back to me, so that I know that this corn continues to live. And this love that has been given through this corn to us in our hands just really touched our hearts, touched the hearts of the children, and helped us to understand how precious a gift it is. And so when we look at this one kernel, and then we look at this one cob, and it's just such a miracle. And children, when they see that, they understand. And so whenever we work with the farmer, he always says, every little seed is precious. And so even if we go into the cornfield and we pick the corn and something falls, he always says, still pick that little kernel up from the ground. It's so precious because it's life. And then also when we shell the corn, he'll always say, look, make sure we take everything off. And see, there's one more little seed here, and then we take that one off as well. So we learn about the preciousness of life and how to pay attention. And we are so grateful to have received this lesson from our dear friend.
Mm. And the story, I don't know if, Silke and I we're involved with a lot of different gardeners and farmers, very modest gardeners ourselves. But, I remember we were speaking to somebody the other day. Do you remember that? And they asked about the difference with this corn, because of course here in America, right, most of us, when we eat corn, we eat sweet corn, and the difference. And a lot of people think of it that this is a decoration, right? But this is flour corn, right? Just if you don't know that, this is grown a lot like wheat is grown, and it's grown until the kernels are fully mature, totally dried out, and then it's ground into the masa that we make tortillas or corn flour, cornbread, and things like that from. So actually, this is an incredibly rich and nutritious food that the Native Americans relied upon for years and years and years. And so part of it, and that was the story that I was recalling, Silke, when our friend shared this with us, because what he calls this is, he said at the time he called it Hopi turquoise corn. And at one point, he had a Hopi man who who was there, and he said, "Oh, look, I've grown the Hopi turquoise corn." And the Hopi man said, "Well, you've grown turquoise corn, but it's not Hopi turquoise corn, because for it to be Hopi turquoise corn, it would have to be grown on Hopi land." And when our friend shared that, he told us that story several times. And at first I kind of thought, hey, I'm a white American guy, and I listen to these stories and I go, oh yeah, that's meaningful, and I kind of blew it off as the truth. That's how I am. But he said it 2 or 3 times to us, 2 or 3 times. And I remember after that, us talking about it, and I said, you know what? And this man who we know, he's not a man of extra words, right? When he said that, he meant it, and he wanted us to know it. And it wasn't just like, someone like me, I can come home and I can plant, and I got to tell you, I'm proud of this corn. It is not easy for me. And so I want to run around, right? And I want to speak about it in this authentic way. Oh, look, I grew Hopi turquoise corn. But our friend, at the very moment he handed those seeds to us, right? He asked us not to make that mistake. And he grows, he's an organic farmer, and he sells these seeds to seed companies. I mean, he's grown acres and acres and acres of this corn over now, 10, 20 years, I'm not sure. But when he handed those seeds, the story was just as important. And you could see it. He's a farmer. He cared about those seeds, those kernels. And when he shared it with us, he wanted us to know its story. He didn't want us to actually go around calling it Hopi turquoise corn. He wanted us to know that this is turquoise corn. And I even in setting this up, I called it blue corn, the story of the blue corn. Yeah, and even you corrected me there. Good.
Well, on that note, I think we ask forgiveness for, having used not the correct name in the title, and just also knowing that the corn is, it's just so precious to us, and it comes in all forms and colors. And sometimes it's referred to that it grows in the colors of the different races on this earth. It shows us, it is a reflection of us human beings that are all of different color, and yet we belong together. And so it's about this connecting human beings and understanding that we are of one earth. We live on this beautiful earth, and I refer to it as the corn mother and the tassel, the father. And here in this beautiful plant, there live so many stories. And if you've ever been in a cornfield, you might remember what the sound is like when the wind rustles through. And when I take children through the cornfield, they are oftentimes not as tall as the corn. And I remember that from my own childhood. There is this beautiful mystery in the cornfield, because the wind, it rustles and it makes this sound, and you can picture that, oh, there's an animal somewhere, and the farmer, of course, will say, yeah, squirrels are in here, they're trying to store up for the winter, and that's a very real story. And then there is the kindergarten teacher who I am, who is like, oh, there might be a dragon in the cornfield. We got to go and pick the corn and maybe we'll find him. You can also use your imagination. It's just such a magical place. And for children who have not experienced that, or if you don't have a cornfield around, you might only be able to access corn by getting it from the store. And if you do get it from the store, you get corn that you bring to your dinner table. Just know that you too have that potential of working with it. You can pay attention to the individual little seeds. And when you peel the corn, you can take the little husk and it can turn into a doll. And this is just because I'm a very playful person. I take them like, oh, look, this is material I can use. And oftentimes it goes into the compost. And so I'm like, oh, and look, there's even hair. And it makes me excited as a doll maker. So I see all those things. And this corn silk has also medicinal use that I can't describe it fully. So it's something you could Google. But there's just so much potential. So it nourishes us, we can eat it, we can play with it. And, so if you take, let's say your child eats, sometimes children say, I don't want to eat all my corn. You can say, well, if you eat it all the way to the end, then we can do something with it. So you also have this potential of turning it into, say, little people. And these are different little people. And that's, of course, a story for another time. Like maybe we can do a Zoom live craft lesson. That won't happen today. But I just want to acknowledge that there's so many things that are living in that corn that helps us to engage in life.
Well, and can we talk a little bit about just how we tie in that story and even throughout the cycle of the year with the kids, because both with our friend who we bring our students to him, he has an incredible farm nearby, and they've also witnessed us growing the corn here, and even our classroom is now quite decorated with all the stalks and so so they've handled it throughout the year. They planted it, they've watched it grow, and we've even sung to it throughout the year. And as those experiences happen, we're also kind of weaving in these elements of the story, just like that real story that our friend told us about the origin of the corn. But we can also tell these playful stories about the animals who are going through our cornfields and, of course, looking for food for the coming winter, just like we are. And then, of course, in the experience of working with these materials, holding these corn stalks, right? They stripped them down. Right. And because they become light little sticks, sort of like swords, sort of like, weren't you even throwing spears with the kids doing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, corn stalk makes a great spear. If you love spear throwing, I have, there are many uses.
So, but in each of these experiences, right, what I'm trying to get at that experience of tying story. It's real stories, it's playful stories, it's also experiences. And this is something that we speak to a lot, and that in general we call the storytelling loop, because there's something real here, right? We're not only telling stories. It's beautiful if that's what you choose to do, right? But when we tell a story and we weave stories into something real like this corn, and not just this object of corn, but of course the very process of the growing it and the other materials, and the kids did make with Silke those corn husk dolls, and then the stories that come out of the play as those characters come alive in their hands, and in the sound of the field, and the characters have a similar sound as your hand scrapes against that corn husk. It creates an incredibly rich experience. And we're sharing with you some of this reflection on this corn because it's so meaningful to us. But we also really want to encourage you and invite you to think about what is in your life that you can really get in touch with. Do you have a garden outside? Or what is your yard like? Or what's the neighborhood park like? Where are these things in your life that you're engaging with, that you can feel? And it might be something like, maybe it's just one of those really gnarly, pumpkins that you bring home, from the grocery store with all the bumps or something on it. There's such a story in there. And when we activate that playfulness a little bit, and also the respect, like that original story that our farmer told us, it it can it can it can draw an experience and attention from the kids and also from ourselves into what this is, the experience, the seed, the growing, all of that, right? In a way that, like, for example, when Silke takes the kids down to the farm, right? Farm work is hard, right? And sometimes, like you were talking a little bit about how the playfulness with which you went out and harvest, because you were harvesting, I mean, acres of corn takes a long time to hand harvest, and it's thick and it's rough. It's not delicate work exactly, but can you speak about that a little bit?
Well, I decided to ask the kids to step into a kingdom, and the cornfield was the kingdom, and of course the farmer is the king. And then I asked them to each come up with a name for themselves, like Lady Risa, or they all came up with names for themselves. And so we entered into that cornfield with an imagination. And that really was helping the children to stay engaged while they were working, and they were very playful. And so we look at it not just as like, oh, this is the work that has to be done. And I have been raised on a farm, and for me that was oftentimes like, you have to do it and it's important, and the weather is coming in. And I think to awaken in our children and in ourselves again the joyfulness of working with the land and engaging, we have to basically bring in stories to make it to motivate the children, and so also for ourselves to remember it's such a gift, it's such a incredible blessing that we have these cornfields with true corn, that a seed that has been protected and that is has all this incredible life energy that helps us as humans to stay strong and healthy.
Yeah. And so just reiterating that concept of course, we love sharing the work and the stories and the things that we do. But what we really wish for you is really to just inspire this vision that, like, oh, right, aha, there are lots of ways that you might be able to explore working with a similar material, whether it's a plant, maybe it's something in your house, maybe it's a craft, maybe it's just a set of toys, maybe it's just your Legos, whatever. But if you've ever walked through a windy, rustling field of corn with a group of kids, while you're all in that story, believing it, holding it, playing with it. Whoa, this is precious. This is like the stuff of life. It's just such a rich experience. Nobody walks away from that going, whatever. It's so deeply meaningful, and we really wish that for you. So we wish, just want to encourage you to explore that in the ways that you can, with the materials and the plants and the toys and the whatever that you have in your life, wherever you are. So I think that's about it. Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, I would also like to say that if you have children in your life that have, for example, fear of spiders or creatures, or have sensory issues, and that might feel a little bit like, oh, I don't really want to go in there. Sometimes even for those children, what helps is to maybe take one corn stalk out and say, look, you get to hold that. And or I peel the corn for you and I look at it and I give it to you, because for some children who have not been raised in that way, or who have not had the experience, they can feel a little bit overwhelmed by it too. And so then we need to be bringing it to them in a way that they can see the beauty of it. We awaken their curiosity and we say, look, feel it, and look. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? And also this corn actually represents like community. Imagine you once were a little seed and in all these people. Oh, isn't it amazing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what it reminds me of too? Just in an urban set, Boy, isn't that a beautiful little apartment building, like a sky, what do you call it? A skyscraper apartment. Each one of those is a little apartment. There's a story, not just in this cob, but in each one of those kernels, there can be a little family living inside. And each one, I mean, there's a couple hundred here just on the one cob. So interesting. Oh, and the other thing, and I get so excited. The last thing I wanted to say was eating it, right? Because that's why we grow it. We don't grow this for decoration. We love it. It's beautiful, but we eat it, right? And when you have the richness of this storytelling throughout the year, and the kids, Silke tied all these. We have a classroom outside, and Silke tied all the corn stalks. It's just like this. And the wind blows and they rustle, and there's like 2 or 3 of these corn cobs on each post there. It's so funny. And the kids are out there, in between. I mean, they get up in the middle of lessons and they go and they grab a few kernels off and they're sitting there snacking on it because it's so meaningful to them. Because it's there, because it's what, and they have the experience, they feel like they own it, right? There's this sense of ownership, and they're literally just swallowing that history and that story into their bodies. And of course, the cornbread or different things that we might make out of it. But just talk about a full cycle experience. We talk about the storytelling loop. How are we tying stories into our activities, our play, our even true stories, our eating, our objects. When we do that, we create incredibly rich experiences for ourselves and for the children. Bless you, little turquoise corn from Hopi land.
And bless the farmer who has given us this understanding how important it is to value each little seed. And I think especially in a time when, we give children very often so many things, and, or food often gets thrown away, it brings us back to paying attention. And so I hope that, that this was an inspiring talk, and that, if you have an ear of corn on your dinner plate, maybe you look at it in a new way. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Thank you, Silke.